We have a Alright guys, I want to get started as soon as possible. Yeah, we beat one of them. Rodney, who's the end of it?
Ja, to je straks te hebben leren geen beetje wel.
So yes, I will take more classes.
Mas fica mais político,
Давай.
Ready? Great. With the way here, you guys ready?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, then. Well, first of all, before we begin this round, I'd like a large round of applause to both sides. Do we want to go through all the judges? You have a 7-panel judging crew judging you today, so I think we'll just save some time and just run right into it. He will be giving you time signals, so look to my far left for time signals. And without further ado, I would now like to welcome Academy of Higher Learning B to open up this debate about whether or not Edward Snowden was right to blow the whistle. Here, here.
Everybody ready? Martin Luther King Jr. once stated, quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." As we can see in today's resolution, Edward Snowden was right to blow the whistle. We can see that a threat to justice is injustice. Now we'll move on to definitions. Right is something that is morally correct. Edward Snowden was an American citizen who was exercising his constitutional rights. Now we can see that there are two different types of leaks in today's resolution. First, the first type of leak is one that reveals information that involves war crimes, massacres, tortures, and other human rights violations of the sort. Secondly, it's information that can affect diplomacy. As we can see in China and in the example of China and North Korea, China has strained relations now with North Korea as they are frustrated with the fact that North Korea has attacked a small island off the coast of South Korea, thus resulting in possible changes in trade between the two nations. Now we'll move on to our contentions. Our first contention is that in matters of preserving individual human rights, whistleblowing is justified. In Abu Ghraib, we can see that the Iraqis were tortured, stripped naked, some were killed, humiliated, and dehumanized. We can see that this is one of the most ultimate violations of human rights and this was done just for the sake of torture, so that the United States, they violated these human rights just for the sake of torture, not resulting in any kind of benefit. We can see that this is one of the most egregious violations of human rights, and is ultimately one of the situations where after the whistle was blown, we can see that they had to adjust the Abu Ghraib prisons in order to satisfy international media standards. Now, we can also see in the Vietnam War, there were massacres of little children and women. We can see that there was a lot of government hideout and censorship in order to prevent the public from accessing this kind of information. However, we can see that later on, when the whistle was blown, after it was revealed to the public, it ultimately led to the United States having to de-escalate from Vietnam. The huge impact of this is that the public now has a system to check the government's power, the abusive power of the government. Now moving on to our second contention. Rejecting whistleblowing sets a bad precedent. First off, we believe that safety does not give the government and shouldn't give the government a blank check to do whatever they want under the premise of national security. Secondly, this sets a bad precedent for the government to have incentives to hide more projects that violate human rights. Third, we can see in the example of MK Ultra during the Bill Clinton presidency, where they hid from the public they kidnapped members of society that had almost no profiles or connections to anyone else in society, kidnapped them, brought them to government institutions, tested LSD on them just to see if there was any kind of benefit towards their military. They also did this to their own scientists. Thus, we can see that this violated human rights. This is one of the most ultimate impacts that we can see where human rights and the right to privacy was abused by the government in the sake of seeing what they viewed as right. Fourth, we don't allow the government to go to extreme measures to protect safety, even if there may be benefits of it. For example, in Cuba, we can see that humans were they were experimented on, and though they found the vaccine to leukemia, it ultimately was an infringement on human rights. It led to it ultimately shows that it can, even though they found something good for society, it was a large violation of human rights, and this is what happens when we don't allow the whistle to be blown. Without whistleblowing, we don't have checks to prevent the government from infringing upon our human rights for what they think serves national or societal interests. Now, for our third contention, by stopping abuses now, before it gets worse, we limit the negative consequences. For example, as we can see in a school classroom situation where a student will lie to the teacher, but if they continuously lie without being caught, the impacts will be worse. They'll have more consequences. They'll be punished more. Now we can see that this will be the same if the government if there are no whistleblowers of society to stop the government and to check their own power. This will lead to more and more hidden projects that can violate on our human rights and abuse them to so-called promote societal or national interests. We can see that that Germany, in the Edward Snowden example, Germany became angered because they found out that they were actually having international spies in Germany. However, we can see that if they were not found, the negative consequences could have been worse. It would have been worse without having found and without having the whistle blown to stop these kinds of so-called national interests being solved. Now, to go over all the points, our first contention stated that in matters of preserving individual human rights, whistleblowing is justified. The impacts of this, we can see that without such a system, the public has no way to check the government's power. Secondly, rejecting whistleblowing sets a bad precedent. As we can see in the MK Ultra example, it was the ultimate example of showing that it leads to bad precedents and that will not benefit society and will not promote and will not be beneficial to human rights. Third, it ultimately leads to bad diplomatic relations. Therefore, we strongly urge an affirmative ballot. Thank you.
No prep time required? All right, thank you.
Sir, can you please right now, after your speech, explain what did Snowden actually revealed?
He revealed that the NSA was violating the right to privacy of the individuals.
How?
By the NSA, they had taken a step further, and they had tapped into emails, phone calls, messages, all those things that are not revealed to the public.
Okay, so why right to privacy is important? Can you please explain?
Because each individual has their own right to privacy. They're their own human being. We don't go around snooping into someone's email, finding out what they do in their daily life and what they may not see as what they is societally.
Sir, but when we see in conflict that the government, especially the police force, has the power to search you if they see you're a potential threat, or would you allow it under your policy? Would you believe it is justified for the police to search people if they see them as a potential threat?
Well, in that case, it's a different scenario from this, because as we can see through the NSA, they were just violating the rights of every single individual. If that's what you're saying, then they're saying, the NSA is saying every single person is a potential threat.
Sir, can you please somehow support your sentence that you actually have proof that every single person was actually spied?
Well, actually, I'm saying that the NSA was spying on all the they had the capability to spy on anybody that they wished.
Okay, thank you. What did people actually lose without right to privacy?
Well, we're not saying that they lost anything, but as we can see in my third contention, Germany was angered through the fact that they had sent international spies through the NSA in order to spy on them.
Okay, if people were actually afraid that they have lost their right to privacy, why did they still use mobile phones, emails further on?
Because that's something that they have. That's something that they are not denied access to. They can still use that, but it's not right for the government to take advantage and go around the right to privacy.
But sir, you're saying again that they were afraid to use these links because they want to actually protect the right to privacy. Then why, when they know that their emails, their phone calls can be listened, why they still use it?
I never said they were afraid of using these tools and such as mobile phones, as you stated, but it's the fact that they didn't know that they were being spied on and tapped on in this kind of situation.
So we're basically saying that the government is an evil force that likes to listen to other people's phone calls.
In this situation, they were.
Okay, thank you.
Negative like prep time for the first speech?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
I'll let you know as it passes. Just let them know as it passes. Without further ado, I welcome the first speaker of side negative to open up the negative case line and speech not to exceed 6 minutes. Go ahead.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition has been running from the debate as fast as Edward Snowden has been running from the United States law. We have counted the number of times they have mentioned the NSA or PRISM, and that was 0. We have counted the number of times they have called out the name Edward Snowden, and that was once when they read the motion, ladies and gentlemen. We would ask the proposition to actually debate on the motion, to actually provide context of why the NSA is there, and what were the actual benefits or harms that Snowden has caused by whistleblowing. And this is what we're going to do to you. We're going to show you that there are actually tangible harms when Snowden revealed this information. However, there were no tangible harms when people had no knowledge about the NSA. We are going to operate under the position that rights are only valuable when they have some sort of tangible benefits. You have the freedom of choice because you want to make your life better in choosing. You have the right to privacy because you have the feeling of safety. However, we see that the feeling of safety is much better enforced when people, first of all, don't know that the government is protecting them from terrorist forces. And we see that they don't need that right, that the government has to protect national security much more than it has to protect the right to privacy in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, going on to the first argument of which says it's preserving human rights, and they had mainly two examples here, Abu Ghraib and Vietnam. We see that these cases differ completely. Essentially, they're debating whistleblowing in general, and we don't want to debate that. We see that whistleblowing in some cases can be right, in some cases can be wrong. In this case, it's especially wrong. Abu Ghraib is very different. First of all, it's not domestic. Second of all, ladies and gentlemen, the torture that was going on and rape that was going on in the Abu Ghraib prison was brutal and pointless. However, the NSA, ladies and gentlemen, is not brutal and pointless. We see that the NSA targets specific individuals that are already suspects, citizens that are suspects. They simply store the information, and after they have found out that somebody is a suspect, then they look up of what they're doing. Simply exactly the same as the police can, when they see you, for example, smoking in the street, ask you for an ID in Maryland because they might think that you are underage and breaking the law. Same goes for people who are driving in a reckless manner. They might think that you are drunk, therefore ask you to stop and ask you to provide your documents. We see that this works exactly in the same case, ladies and gentlemen. So we would ask the proposition to actually debate on the motion and to actually return to what Edward Snowden has done and explain to us what were the benefits of Edward Snowden's whistleblowing in this case, in which we see none. Ladies and gentlemen, second argument, how whistleblowing is a good precedent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly the kind of precedent we don't want to set. And we have three reasons for that. First of all, on a matter of law, ladies and gentlemen, Edward Snowden broke the law of the United States. Now, why is that important? Because this is very different from any sort of law, because this law pertains to national security. When you work with very sensitive details and you reveal them to the public, ladies and gentlemen, you're putting three groups of people at risk. You're putting the people who are working with the policy at risk because they're compromised and people view them as some sort of immoral force in the government. Therefore, they can't do their job as well. Second of all, ladies and gentlemen, they put the whole policy at risk because we see that there are certain harms. This policy can only work when people don't know that it exists because ladies and gentlemen, it's an invasion of privacy of terrorist suspects. And we see that terrorist suspects, when they know that such a policy is in place, they're going to refer to it a lot more. They're going to have much more protection so that they wouldn't be revealed as terrorist suspects or wouldn't be revealed as plotting a terrorist attack, ladies and gentlemen. We see a very big difference with airport security. Airport security is also a compromise on privacy, ladies and gentlemen, but it's consensual. Why is it consensual with the people? Because airport security checks can work when people know that they exist. Because simply you remove the bombs, any bombs if there are, or any weapons when they enter the plane. However, in this case, ladies and gentlemen, when people know that this policy exists, they can easily try to evade it through other measures because it simply only targets your Facebook profile, your phone, your email, and all of that, ladies and gentlemen. And we see that you can protect yourself from that if you are plotting any sort of attack. The last, ladies and gentlemen, reasoning is international relations. We don't need to explain you any further. They've already given us examples of how other countries right now hate the United States and are very good trading partners and allies, ladies and gentlemen, just because of this whistleblowing. We see another harm that China, Venezuela, Russia right now has the precedent to never listen to the United States when it's forming its own human rights agenda, which we generally see as a good thing because it's trying to protect human rights around the world. However, now Venezuela has a right to say, look, what Edward Snowden has revealed, you are a very bad country, therefore we will never listen to your pressure in the international arena because you no longer have the legitimacy to do that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the last argument, how it limits negative consequences, and they essentially just had the Germany example, which we believe falls to our side, and they said they would be even more angry if Snowden hadn't whistleblown. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they would not have known, and we don't necessarily see the link of how they would have been more angry if they found out later later or sooner. We don't see the link, and we don't see that as a logical explanation. But we see, ladies and gentlemen, that there aren't that many negative consequences right now. People are still using the internet. People are still using their own cell phones because they don't believe in their hearts that this is a very big infringement. Or else, ladies and gentlemen, if they were to protect their own privacy this much, they would somehow limit the government through measures that they can from listening to it. And lastly, we see that the NSA, in this case, needed a tool to spy on their own citizens that are suspects because the Patriot Act never let them to do that. And we see that this is the only way, and we see that there are more and more citizens in the United States that are committing terrorist attacks. And for these reasons, we beg you to oppose the motion.
Will you suppress that, please? Sure thing. I'll let you know the count.
Thank you. Thank you for your speech, but first we'd like to clarify. Do you know what the U.S. Constitution is?
Yes, I am aware of such a document.
Do you know that is the supreme law of the land?
I do know, and I also know that the right
Okay,
to
thank
privacy
you. Thank
is
you.
very unclearly stated in the Constitution as well, so it's up to interpretation.
Okay, thank you. So you don't know the Constitution. So by violating the Constitution, which protects this right of privacy, the United States is breaking the law.
Essentially, no, we don't see. We see that the national security right now takes precedent over a law that unclearly states the right to privacy, especially since we see that the United States, what it's doing right now, is spying on suspects.
Okay,
It's
thank
the
you.
same thing that you're
Thank you.
stopping a
Thank
drunk
you.
driver.
No, when you stop a drunk... Okay. So when you stop a drunk driver, does the drunk driver know that you're stopping him?
Well, once you stop him, yes. Unless he's very
So-
drunk.
So, if you're saying that this... Do you know what the Patriot Act did?
What the Patriot Act did? Not specifically. I know it's a very interesting backronym.
Do you know the difference between the Patriots Act and this PRISM Act that we're talking
Yes, the Patriot Act cannot target citizens. That's exactly what I outlined in my speech.
about? Sorry, you're wrong. The Patriots Act did attack citizens. The difference is that the PRISM Act went to private corporations and set up these citizens as well.
Okay, so if that's the only difference, we can take that.
Okay then. And so you're saying that Venezuela is saying that the U.S. is illegitimate because Snowden showed that the U.S. was spying on its citizens, correct?
Yes, especially for Russia, which has now offered
thank you.
Edward Snowden asylum.
So is Snowden the one who's spying on the citizens and making the U.S. government do these illegitimate
No, he's the
actions?
one that put the whole system and the people working with the system and the people
Okay,
that
thank
the
you.
system that's trying to
Thank
target
you.
terrorists at risk.
Thank you. So you're saying that it's okay to blame the person who revealed this corruption, even
Yes,
if
it
he
is
wasn't
okay.
the one who did the
Yes,
corruption?
it is perfectly okay to blame him.
So if
That
you're
is the
cheating
motion.
so if you're cheating on a test and some kid points out that you're cheating on a test, you didn't do anything wrong, right?
But you cheating on a test doesn't kill potentially thousands of people.
Do you know how
Unless
many
it's a very
people are
important
killed when there's an oppressive government?
How many people are killed when there's an oppressive government?
Yes.
I don't know how many people have had heart attacks after they found out that Edward Snowden told them that the NSA is spying on them.
You didn't answer my question. I asked you, do you know how many people are killed in an oppressive government?
It depends on the oppressive government. In the United States, very few, I think.
Okay, so you want to talk about North Korea?
I would not like to talk about North Korea because it's not part of the motion.
Well, yes, but they are an oppressive government.
Yes, it's very sad.
Yes, and Do you know how many people are killed in North Korea? Do you know how much?
Specifically, no, a lot, but this motion isn't about North Korea.
Okay, thank you. And do you know, so what do you think is the extent of which privacy can be violated?
The extent that is necessary to protect national security, which supersedes it.
So you're saying that human rights should not be upheld for this privacy?
No, we say that human rights can be compromised to an extent when there is a risk for the country and there's a conflict that the country is currently in.
Thank you.
Stop for time, please.
Yes. Now welcome the second speaker on the side resolution to extend the approved baseline.
Judge ready? Opponents ready? The opponent's case is like an ox. They have a point here, and a whole lot of bull in between. First, I'd like to move on to our contentions and then refute theirs. First of all, we have stated that in matters of preserving human rights, whistleblowing is justified. The reason this is true is because today's debate is about the right of someone to reveal this information. If you look at the Declaration, the supreme rule of America, it shows that people can reveal this information. People can do this. This is our human rights that we are talking about. The negative side wants to demote these human rights. They don't think it's important. They believe that, some random national security that they did not bring up examples is more important than the human rights that America is based on. America is based on how the governed. We are governed and we give some rights to the government to protect us. But if they're infringing on our human rights, then this is not acceptable. Our second point is that it sets a precedent against human rights violations. This is one of the strongest points of today's debate. For the negative side, they promote that we don't do anything, that we never reveal this, that the government keeps doing what they're doing, that they can say national security is important and then keep abusing our human rights. As we stated, because of MK Ultra, people were kidnapped from their homes and tested for the sake of national security and progressing our nation. Furthermore, if we did not find this out, if we did not stop this, then it would get worse. The negative is advocating that we allow human rights to continue. The government will keep getting more oppressive, saying, it's national security, let's have a curfew so people don't bomb places. It's national security, you can't do certain things. The government is a democracy. It's the right to govern is because we give them that power. They are abusing our human rights, and that is not acceptable. Our third contention is that we are nipping the bud of the government's violation of human rights, and this will lead to less repercussion. They say that, governments will never find out, that other people will never find out, but this is untrue. The CIA has to disclose their information. The reason we know about MK Ultra, this terrible policy that we had, is because they had to disclose the information. In the future, governments will know about what we did. They will be more angry because they will realize in the future that it wasn't an American citizen that was trying to help their nation, that someone else found this out, that they would be much more angry. As we have stated, Germany is pissed off. They aren't happy about this. It would get worse if we let this extend, if we let them find out through other ways. It is good that we are stopping this violation of human rights soon and that we are showing other countries that we want to make a beneficial change for the nation. Now I'd like to move on to our opponent's contentions. They stated in the crossfire that police can search people, but this is with a warrant. This is when they get a warrant from the government and then they go to the person and they say, we have a warrant, can we search your home? For the NSA, for the government, they don't do this. They just randomly go on. I wouldn't know if the NSA was spying on me right now. I wouldn't get a warning that they have a warrant. So you can obviously see this is abusing my human rights. They also say in the crossfire that why do people use mobile devices even though they're being watched? Is the negative advocating that we just roll over if governments are abusing our human rights, that we just roll over and stop doing something because they're abusing that? We can't just give up. We need to fight for our human rights, which is what this world really needs. They also say that national security, this is one of their main points for why we should keep this policy. But the fact of the matter is, they did not state any tangible examples of where national security is protected. They did not state any examples where the government has found a terrorist organization and has stopped them. They have only said, oh, maybe they could possibly see some guy on Facebook say, oh, let's bomb America. They haven't shown any examples. You can see that all this policy does is abuse human rights. The results are non-existent. They also say that smoking in the US and stopping cars, and you can search them, so it's okay if we do this. But the thing is, again, you need a warrant to search someone's car. You can't go in. We can stop you as American citizens if you try to go in our homes. We will not let you if you do not have a warrant. This is why NSA and having a warrant are different. NSA goes in without you knowing. They also say that Edward Snowden broke the law, but if you look at the Declaration and the Constitution, these are the supreme rules of the land. We base all our laws off of this. Edward Snowden is not breaking these laws. What laws is he even breaking? If he is supporting these laws, if he is exercising his right to these laws, then this debate is fully won, because the topic clearly states that Edward Snowden had the right to blow the whistle. They also said that the policy will be at risk, but we on the affirmative say that this is good. We want this policy to be at risk because it is detrimenting human rights, because it is progressing the censorship and progressing human rights violations. If we do not stop this, then more human rights will continue. There will be more MK Ultras. There will be more testing on humans. There will be worse human rights violations. For example, this is an example of why we don't do stuff to humans. We can find the cure to cancer if we start testing on humans today. We can start testing cures for diseases if we test on humans. But we don't do it because we promote human rights, because people have a right to live. Even though it would benefit the future, we don't do it because everyone has their rights. For these reasons, we strongly affirm. Thank you.
Is the right to freedom of speech included into your beloved Constitution?
Yes.
Yes. So does that grant you a chance to scream bomb in the middle of an airport? Does that give you the right to say fire in a crowded building?
Well, the thing about this is that it harms other individuals.
Right. So isn't that exactly what we were saying? That if people are not spied on who are potential terrorists, we are going to have harms because we don't know whether they're plotting or not.
No.
No?
Can you rephrase your question?
So essentially, rights are not absolute to an extent because there is a matter of security at stake, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, but this policy isn't promoting security.
Why is it not?
Because it has not found any tangible terrorists.
All right.
And is only progressing human rights
All right.
violations.
Are you aware that U.S. embassies in Yemen were just recently closed and all over Northern Africa?
I was not aware of that.
Are you aware that Obama has received a letter with anthrax 2 months ago, proving that some extent of terrorism still exists in the status quo, right?
Yes.
And we don't know where this information is coming from, right?
No.
And you believe, and you would have us believe that whenever the NSA has found something, they would gladly declare that, well, the NSA is effective. We just found it through spying on this and this person, right?
Yes, well, obviously, as you see...
So is it fair for you to ask us evidence from a secret government organization that is working to prevent terrorism attacks, how they have found that out? Is it fair for you to ask us that evidence?
Yes, because the government is infringing on our human rights. They have to give us a decent reason for why they're doing this. If you keep promoting national security and don't give any real tangible examples, how can we know you're actually promoting it? I can say national security, let's get rid of video games.
How about the tangible harms of revealing the NSA when people know that it exists and they can counter its effects on society?
What's a tangible harm?
A harm that you can actually see.
No, what is the tangible harm of having that?
A tangible harm would be a bomb exploding in LA.
Well, have you proved that bombs have been stopped?
No, a tangible harm that people right now can counter the effects of the NSA because they know it exists and they can simply not call their friends, not text their friends, not email their friends about what they're doing right now.
I don't think that is.
Although they were previously unaware of this policy.
So rephrase your question, please.
Are there not tangible harms when people find out about a secret government policy that is trying to find out whether people are secretly
No, I do not believe there are tangible harms because most of the threats that come are from outside the nation, and furthermore, because of these.
How about were the Boston bombers American?
Yes.
Right.
But did we stop them from?
All right. Were most of the people who were on the plane in 9/11 American citizens?
I don't know.
All right. is when Osama bin Laden was removed and killed. Sorry, really slip of the tongue. I'm sorry. Was the next in line person an American citizen in Al Qaeda?
I don't get what that question has to do.
Yes. Yeah, could you please give us 2 minutes? Dear ladies and gentlemen, what Team Affirmative had to do today to win this debate was to prove that Edward Snowden was right. What they chose to do, however, was that in a theoretical universe, whistleblowing in general is fine. But that's not what the debate is about. That's not what we have to contest today as Team Negative. What we have to show today, that NSA was there for some sort of valid reason, and that Snowden, Mr. Snowden, did something that, in effect, was bad for the citizens of the United States and of the world, and that's what we're gladly are taking upon ourselves. Dear ladies and gentlemen, and that's what I'll prove today. First, I'll analyze what the effect on human rights in the United States was by Mr. Snowden's actions, and then I'll talk about the global scope of Mr. Snowden's actions. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, to understand the debate, you need to have a context of, of the world and which the debate is set. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the United States is a front-running advocate of human rights. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is involved in promotion of gay rights in Africa, on human rights in Asia, etc., etc. And we see that for that reason, it is constantly under threat, both from foreign agents and from domestic agents. We see anthrax letters being sent to the White House. We see cargo planes being, grounded in Kenya, in Nairobi, that were to be sent to the United States to bomb some strategic institutions in the United States, and then so on and so on. So we see that the United States is under threat. But that's one of the is foreign. The other is domestic. And the trouble with the domestic threat is that it is now protected under the Constitution. The terrorists working inside, and there are terrorists. There were terrorists in 9/11. See how that turned out. There were terrorists in Boston bombing. See how that turned out. They are now protected by the United States Constitution that the Team California loves so much. And we need a framework to tackle that issue. And for that reason, PRISM exists to protect the people of Constitution, to protect their fundamental right to life, which is the first right defined clearly by the Constitution, to protect the life of each citizen in the United States by having a mechanism that could prevent harms of those under suspicion. Dear ladies and gentlemen, they conceded to that. They said that PRISM is a mechanism that allows the United States government to survey, but that doesn't mean that the United States government surveys everybody. They conceded that it is only used as a target mechanism, and it is needed because there is no other way to fight with a threat inside, and there is a substantial threat inside, dear ladies and gentlemen. So, and for that reason, because the domestic terrorists working inside now know that there is that mechanism against them, that mechanism is ruined. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the whole point of PRISM was that it was not known, that the people believed that the terrorists inside believed
they are safe, and they now know that they are not, and they now know other ways to go about and do their things that are of potential threat to the rights of many others. And dear ladies and gentlemen, so Mr. Snowden, in effect, wishing to protect an unclearly defined right to privacy, sacrificed the right to life and to basic security of each and every citizen of his beloved nation, and that's what we don't like. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we see that precedent that the government uses national security to limit the rights of others within reasonable limits is all around the world. We see in Ireland, in the 70s, when the IRA was raging, you could arrest people and inspect them in suspicion that they were planning terrorist attacks. We see that the same happening in the Basque Wars, and we see the same happening if I go about, in a weird manner in the street. I can also get arrested and inspected for not to be under influence of alcohol or marijuana or whatever. So we see that governments do breach the less important rights of privacy, less defined rights, to protect the fundamental right of life, to life. And dear ladies and gentlemen, that is not a bad example, and it did not lead the United States, which had wiretapping for 50 years, to a police state. I was there a year ago, and it's perfectly fine, even though it had wiretapping for a long time. So it's not, national security is not a bad precedent, and thus their point fails. And now, dear ladies and gentlemen, just briefly, because it wasn't that much of a major issue in the debate, the global scope of this action, the global effects of Mr. Snowden's actions. We do think that, yes, Germany was reasonably outraged at first, but now we see that first of all, if they had not known that, it would have been fine. Secondly, now they are still in talks with the United States and the situation has vastly improved. But what has not improved and what is of potential to deteriorate even further is the nations such as Venezuela, Cuba, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and such, that the United States now meddle with in some way, by their definition, to protect human rights of, gay people, of minorities, etc., of women even, will have a leverage to go and say that the United States themselves are hypocrites and we don't need to listen to them. So Mr. Snowden actually brought harm to his own citizens and to the citizens of the world, and we cannot tolerate that. And for that reason, we beg you to oppose.
All right. Request from prep time for time learning.
Stop prep time, please. Sure.
Final speaker for the side. No, first speaker for side proposition, cross-examine the content of the second speaker for side thinker.
Does the NSA check letters?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have proof of this?
Well, I believe that if they check on personal communications, that includes letters.
So handwritten letters, they do check these.
Even if they don't, even whatever they check, it is still a valid reason to protect the rights of the citizens of the United States, and we don't really need to debate what types of communications they
Okay,
do
so
check
they should,
upon.
they should check
Morse
these
code,
letters.
maybe.
If they don't check it, they should check these letters.
What we're saying is that what they do is perfectly enough, as defined by them, to protect the
Okay.
rights of lives of the citizens of the
Okay,
United States.
Thank you. Do you believe in human rights?
Oh, of course I do. That's why I support the NSA.
Okay. Has the NSA stopped major bombings?
Yes.
Yes? As in, which ones?
As in those that did not happen, but they would not disclose them because that's the whole point
Okay,
of the United
so if
States
they-
of
why
the
wouldn't-
NSA.
Why wouldn't they disclose it? Because it's already...
Because, sir, the terrorists now in the United States, well, not now, but before Mr. Snowden,
Okay.
did not know that that there is a possibility of them being under surveillance. But if the NSA were to disclose its operations, they would know, and they would find other ways to
Okay, thank you.
go about, and that would be a threat to right
Let me
to
finish my
life.
question.
course.
If the NSA has stopped major bombings, as you said, wouldn't they announce it to the public? Because now that they're under so much scrutiny under the public, wouldn't they want to please their own
Sir,
citizens?
that's the whole point of NSA. It operates under secrecy so that the people, the terrorists inside the United States, feel safe falsely.
So what you're gonna say is that, so what you're saying is that because even though the citizens hate the fact that the NSA has been spying on them, the NSA is not gonna please them. They're not gonna make them feel like they were actually successful.
I have no tangible proof of the hatred of the citizens. I still see them using cell phones. I still see them Facebooking each other, and so on and so on. I see their representatives voting for the NSA program. That's the first thing. And the second thing, again, the suggestion that the NSA should reveal its successes is just ludicrous, sir.
Why is it ludicrous?
Because the NSA would ruin itself by
Why would
disclosing.
it ruin itself? Because if it's disclosing that they've had major successes, it would please the public into believing that this project was
Well, I'll
actually
give you a
realistic.
historical analogy. If Winston Churchill were to reveal the Enigma process, he would have put England to threat. That's the same example, you know. The only way that the English government would have had superiority of the Nazi government is by letting the Nazi government to believe that they are safe and then, you know, prevent all of
So
their
you're saying
attacks.
that there's
the same
going to
is
be
with the NSA.
international threats.
No, what I'm saying is that we need to tackle the domestic threats that are now under the Constitution, that are now feeling safe,
Okay, thank you.
in order to
Okay, thank you.
ensure that
Why did
constitutional
terrorists bomb
rights.
America?
I'm sorry?
Why do terrorists bomb America? What is
Well-
their incentive? What is their reason behind it?
Should I list individual reasons of individual
What is
terrorists?
their reason?
Well, maybe they're wackos. Maybe they hate America. I don't know. But there are certain harms, and we need to prevent them.
Okay, thank you.
Time.
Everyone ready? In cross-examination, my opponent stated that the NSA wants to pretend that they're not doing their job so that citizens feel safe. So the NSA isn't doing their job well. I feel really safe. So that's their point, that even though that they don't want to show that they're doing their job right so that we can feel safe, but that's ridiculous. Why would we feel safe if they're not doing their job? Just because there are no terrorist threats that are coming? If the NSA isn't doing their job, well then that would show that they're not even doing their job well. So then that would mean that this PRISM Act, there's no need for it, they're doing it, and they're violating human rights, and they can't even do their job well. And then they never refuted our definition of Edward Snowden, an American citizen who had the right, because of the Constitution, to show that the NSA was violating human rights. And this is about, as we're saying, we have to prove that Edward Snowden had the right. And they never went against our definition, so he does still have the right. And although they say the Constitution is not saying clearly that he has this right to privacy, well, I'm Team California, I'm from the USA, I know it is in there. The Constitution does clearly say that we have a right to privacy, so it's not unclear. And then, not only this, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Edward Snowden had a right to exert his right and to show the American people that the United States was violating human rights. And once again, although they say that the NSA did not want this, and this was detrimental to the NSA because it showed what they were doing, well, it's not right either to say that the NSA doesn't want to seem like they're doing their job well just so that people can feel safe. I don't understand how that works. And they also said that PRISM exists to protect the people and to protect their right to life. And we never conceded that PRISM is used as a target weapon. And the opponent also states that it is used to go through all of the civilians' emails and text messages, and that civilians, if they felt this danger, they would stop using the internet, they would stop using emails, text messages, Facebook messages. So what they want us to do, they want us to live under a rock. or a room where the NSA can constantly guard us, then maybe they can do their job well and we would feel safe. So what they're saying is that they have the capabilities to be used as a target weapon, but as they stated before, it is not used only as a target weapon. They keep switching between if they did use it as a target weapon or if they're using it on everyone so the civilians wouldn't want to use the internet and other means of the message, but they're wrong. It is surveilling everyone, but there's not a way for them to just simply ignore this. They can't invent their own new form of messaging. There are ways that they're there, and what the negation wants us to do is not do anything, to just live under a rock and shut ourselves up. Not only this, but it is hypocritical. The PRISM Act and the actions that the U.S. take are what angers the terrorists. As they said in Crossfire, terrorists hate the U.S. And what for? Well, the U.S. is promoting human rights. They're saying that they stand up for human rights, and they are circumventing internet censorship and other things along those lines to promote these human rights. But the NSA and the PRISM Act is going against these human rights. What does this show terrorists? It shows terrorists that the United States is hypocritical. And this is the reason why terrorists come to attack the United States. So when Edward Snowden is showing these things, yes, it may show it might create some international tension, but it is showing the U.S. that they can't continue to do this, or else it'll be worse. So things like the PRISM Act, when they're shown, it shows the U.S. government that they need to stop and that this is what is causing the terrorists to come over to us in the first place. And they said that there are no tangible harms that come from having the NSA, but as they haven't clearly shown the tangible benefits that come with the NSA, and as they stated before, there are things like the Boston bombers and 9/11, and those are tangible harms. People were hurt and they were killed. And this happened when the NSA was supposedly, well, I can't even choose if they're doing their job or if they're not, because the opponent does not make a choice, and they do not make a stand on either one. And for the reasons that we have proven that Edward Snowden has the right is exerting his right from the Constitution to uphold privacy and human rights, we're showing that human rights are above national security. So, and for those reasons, we urge an affirmative vote.
Time for the final speaker.
We have 4 minutes, right?
Yes.
Speaker on the side negative team to finish up this debate in a speech not to exceed 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, NSA is not a gossip girl. They're not targeting every single person just to know their secrets. What we actually see, they're targeting specific people for specific reasons. And that is why we support the policy that actually can benefit the society, that wants to protect the society and will actually do so. First of all, we also said, because Team California mainly says that in every single case scenario, people are spied. What we actually told you, that they have the possibility, but they actually target the people that they see that they have to do. We believe that this debate comes down to two clash points. Is privacy important in crisis? And second of all, what are the outcomes of the event that just happened at whistleblowing? Going on to the first point about is privacy important? Because what we see under the status quo, under the Team California status quo, we already have privacy just an illusion. Because we believe that privacy actually what just creates your illusion that you feel safe. But what we believe makes you feel safer, knowing that the fact that you are not going to be bombed when you go out in the streets. We feel you're going to feel safer when you know there are policies actually, when we know that someone is actually protecting you in a matter of that. Because what we see that Team California does not understand that we are actually under threat, under the status quo. Because what we see are tangible actually events that happen. We see bombings happening. We see 9/11 happening. And what they never actually understood from their side, that actually that what the government has to do is that to provide to provide you an obligation to protect its citizens' lives. We believe this is a very important point that they actually never tackled. Because we believe you can have privacy, but you will never stop a bomb by your privacy when the government actually can do with the infringement of your phone calls or something like that. Because what they actually portray is government like a mean girl that likes to abuse every single person that they can. Because what the examples that they brought about the Abu Ghraib Vietnam are actually not the same. Because what we actually said that we're never supporting those examples. There are different examples in different cases. Because what we actually are saying, they were criminals, and we are only targeting people that already have some suspicion. But also because what we actually never understood was our example about police. Because what we told you that already police has the right to actually search you if they see some suspicion when you are in the street, and we already said they were doing that a warrant because they are protecting your security. Also, what we see, I'm not an American citizen, but I'm pretty sure there are two rights in the Constitution: right to privacy and right to life. What we actually see that you cannot always have both, and the government sometimes has to choose what is actually more important. And we already see that no right is absolute. For example, we already told you that you cannot shout fire in a crowded in a crowded room. You already cannot, for example, say bomb in an airport. What we say that there's no right absolute. When we see that already a government can actually do something in the situation. Now, going on to the second point, what are the outcomes of the policy? Because they constantly told us where are the benefits, where are the benefits. First of all, we see that they're not just simply bragging because they're a secret organization that actually has to work under this model. Because what we first of all see that already right now people would be panicking. People would actually fear would actually spread in the society. Well, we don't want to do that. Also, what we see that for them to work efficiently and effectively, they have to work under secret. We already see that because they actually concede to us that under the status quo, people can go through our channels. People can actually plan other events with our channels. And we believe this is already a big harm to the system and to the people in itself. Also, what we see, it may not work because already it is public and they already can do, and that's why we don't have any evidence. Also, what we see, there's a huge harm to international relations because what we actually see, there's going to be leverage for other countries not to listen to USA when already what they're only doing is protecting the obligation that they have to their citizens. So, ladies and gentlemen, we don't believe that infringing privacy is a fundamental flaw from the government when we see harms already being done under the status quo. So we beg to oppose the motion.
All right, I'd like to thank both teams for this debate. Please cross the aisle, shake hands, and wave your
Thanks.
decision.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Vad ska man kalla det?